Today on Supernormalized, we feature Mariana Cooper, otherwise known as Mari. Mari is an intuitive that grew up in a framework of understanding of intuition because of her family and her and their connection to the world. Basically, they have a good faith and a good understanding that these things are all real, and it became a part of her life over time. She actually was what you would call, in some ways, she went into the normal sort of life and to the corporate sort of life, and then has to actually change all of that to rediscover herself. And that happened after a tragedy, which was profound for her, but also opened up her psychic ability and intuition. This is her story and her understanding of intuition, and there's so many really good points in this, so enjoy. I want to say an apologies to everyone today because we had some technical issues with the microphone dropping out and all these sort of things, and I usually attribute that to spirits. So if that doesn't sound right in places, it's because we had to change things around to get it to finish. So thank you for your understanding.
Looking at the statistics that I have for YouTube and for my podcast apps, I have a lot of listeners and viewers that aren't yet liked and subscribed. So if you're on YouTube, like and subscribe. It's free. And if you're on a podcast app, please give me 5 stars. That'd be really cool. It helps other people find these great conversations too. Thank you. Welcome to Supernormalized, Mariana Cooper. Mari,
Hello.
you've had a, what would you say, like a normie sort of life, first of all, completely stressed out, blown out by regular life and all of the things that happen in regular life for all of us, which is so much busyness and so much stress. And it turns you in a different direction and turns you all the way around. Welcome to the show to discuss that path for you.
Oh, thank you. I tell you, you want stressed and blown out, I can give you stories, but I can give you solutions too. I can give you solutions to those stories.
Okay.
What do you want to
Well, that's what we're here for, really, is like to hear what happened to you, and then how you turn that around for yourself. So tell us about that. What happened? I mean, it was a stressful corporate job, profound personal loss. What was going on for you?
I've always been a dreamer, and I've always had my dreams always outpaced my family dreams. My dad was a lieutenant colonel in the Army for 21 years. My mom was a social worker. I said there were professional crisis people. You kind of didn't hear from them unless you were in crisis. Say like, oh, I had a great day. Okay, sweetie, that's nice. Oh, I feel like I want to commit suicide. What? You want to do what? Let's talk. You know, there were crisis people, you know.
Yeah.
But they were had incredible family values, and we still have the family house, and they had it for 60 years, and all the things. But my dreaming, when you come from my dad was a Taurus, my mother was a Virgo, I'm a Leo. So that was, my sister was a Sagittarius. So it's 2 fire signs and 2 earth signs. You really have a little bit of things going on in that kind of household. And they gave me enough of a solid, very traditional background that I could go off on my own dreams and my own passions.
So
I had
the
2 passions. I had 2 major passions.
Yeah.
One was riding horses, and I mean like riding, like competing and all that kind of stuff. And the second was dancing. And
Nice.
I ended up getting engaged to a choreographer, and it was right at the start of my getting my MBA and going into corporate America. And I had to make a decision. Do I go and dance with MTV, or do I go to corporate America and do the 9 to 5? Because I was like, we had a little dance company and he was a big choreographer. And I ended up going the corporate route because of my lovely traditional parents. And he passed away. And that took me in my, like we were going to get a dance studio, we're going to have a dance company. We already had a dance company. We were going to really, do all these things. kids, the whole thing. And we were going to be the very first wedding at Walt Disney World. That's how long ago this was. We were the
Wow.
very first one.
Mm.
And he suddenly passed away. So at, 30 years old, here I am facing this really dark, like what, this is, I was already off the beaten path with my passions as it was, but then my partner in crime was gone. And meanwhile, my mother was always into spirituality. She was intuitive. My grandmother was an intuitive. And so I kind of had that thread kind of going alongside of, um, of life and these passions and corporate and all of that. And that was when it turned from something crazy my mother would do to something I needed to lean into, because I was raised Catholic and went to all Catholic schools. And I found that I would go to the church and would just feel empty. I could go, and I was much happier in the church when there wasn't a mass. I could go and feel the energy of the church and be very centered. To this day, I can do that. But I just felt like I would ask questions and I just wouldn't get answers. And then when my fiance passed away, I took a year and I went around to every major professional medium, and stage mediumship was really big at that time. And but you had to be on like a year waiting list for some of these people. They were just enormous. And I did. I got on these waiting lists and I went from medium to medium, renowned, not like I think I want to be a medium today, like real people, real professionals. And every single one of them said he won't come through for me. He wants you to talk to him directly. Every single one of them.
Wow.
And so I finally, on his birthday, what would have been his birthday, I said I had to go to New York City for a class, and it was all about mediumship. And the woman was going to, do readings for us, and that's what I thought. And so I was living. I moved. Uh, went into New York City and got into this class, and we all had to hold a picture of our loved one who passed away, because there was a whole class of people whose loved ones had passed away. And I thought we were going to give him to the teacher. She's going to do a reading for us. And I told him, his name was Kerry. I told him, I said, look, if you don't come through today on your birthday, after I've been through this for a year, I'm not going to try to communicate with you ever again. I'm done. I'm done. I can't. This is enough is enough. So we got in the class and she does this, kind of prayer of protection, and, has us do this meditation. And she says, okay, now you're going to all read each other. And I was like, wait, what? Are you kidding me? Like, how I'm supposed to read? So she said, everybody swap pictures. So they swapped pictures, and she says, did anybody? We had swapped pictures before we did the meditation. She said, did anybody get anything about the picture they were holding? And I said, well, I did. Now, by that time, I had been already doing some readings for people, because I was already doing like intuitive readings, but just had stumbled into that, just was playing around with it. And I ended up reading this woman saying, she says, all right, well, why don't you say what you get around this person? I said, oh, it feels like she had some sort of lung issue. And the woman whose picture was, the owner of that picture, she's like, oh my God, that's true. She died of lung cancer. And I went on, and I started getting all these things right. And she was, and the whole class was like, and then, and so the teacher was like, that's really good. You're really good. So she moved on to the next person. They couldn't do a reading. Then she moved on to the next person. They couldn't do the reading either. So she started giving me each one of their pictures. I ended up reading every single person in the class. Like the whole
Wow.
class revolved around me doing the reading for every single person in the class, until it got to my picture with him. And she said, well, I'll read for him. And he gave me like some little message. But by the end of it, she asked me to work for her. She asked me to be her apprentice. And I had a line of people who were catching me in the hallway asking me if I could do readings for them. So it was this gateway, honestly,
Mm.
that opened, and it kind of gave me this tangible proof that I was onto something, that I could, I could somehow connect and communicate and receive long form contextual answers, not just seeing 4:44 on a clock, or getting a parking space, or having a coinky dink.
Mm.
It was really like there was a difference between getting a sign and getting a message. That was like
Yes.
there's a big distinction. And coming from a background of Catholicism, because my parents were both Catholic, and I went to Catholic elementary school and Catholic high school, all girls, all Catholic high schools, um, before I went to college. And we had mass every week and all these things, and it was always, all this stuff. We were always saying all this stuff, but how do you get the answers back? And why does a guy have to be in between me and the answers? Like, why does this priest get the answers, and then I have to do all these things, genuflect and take communion and to get my like, when do I get the answers that actually apply to my life, not just to the gospel from whatever BC and all this. And so, um, my as we fast forward to today, because I could take you through all kinds of stories, but one of the big premises I have and I've had is, it hit me one day. I was walking on the beach and I heard, there's what, 9 major religions, there's 600 different types of divination, where because people have spent a lot of time trying to figure out the answers, how to pray, with God. If God has taught billions of people how to ask him for stuff in all kinds of fancy ways, with all kinds of fancy stories, and with billions of people, you've taught all these people in all these different languages and dialects in all these different countries all over this particular planet. Let's not even get into the rest of the galaxies. How to ask him for stuff. Wouldn't he have at least one equally robust way of getting the answers back? Like, isn't there a system? If you have so many systems for me to ask the question, isn't there at least one system that's meaty, the substantive of how to get the answers back? Why would you start billions of one-way conversations and have to manage all these people, and there's no way to get the answers back? And that actually was a tripwire into when I left my corporate job. Well, that's a whole nother tangent, but I was in a very high octane international advertising career, and I did sponsorships and promotions and worked on the Olympics and world tours and all kinds of things. And it was a very high end position, and I was very unfulfilled and very stressed out. I liked the content of what entertainment marketing, going to tennis matches and award shows and things like that, but the politics and the 9 to 5 and the being off my own biological clock, with when I would have to wake up and answering to all these people and not being able to take a day off unless I got permission, all that kind of stuff, that was just killing me. And so, between the fiance passing away and this career that was just so crushing, and this need to get these answers, I started to channel, and I learned what channeling was with him passing away. I started to channel him for my fiance. I got, like, when I got home that night from that class, I channeled 30 pages from, I still have them. They're actually, I found them just recently. They're all yellow and everything. But I channeled 30 pages from him, and it was just this conversational response, and just telling me, hey, try this, and don't worry about me this way, and focus on this, and don't focus on that, and keep going. And it was like this encouraging words and these kind words. And eventually, as I started to um my corporate career was starting to meld with my psychic career, I left my corporate job and I went and was a contractor for a while, because we all do that. And then till you find your way through into entrepreneurship in its fullest extent. So one of my contracts, my client brought me into a major, Fortune 100 company. And she said, I know I'm going to put you on as a marketing person, but what I really need is your psychic abilities in the office. I need you to help me with interviewing people. I need you to help me with corporate politics. I need you to be my personal psychic. So she had me on the budget as a major marketing consultant, but she was using me behind closed doors as her personal intuitive. And
That's
that,
cool.
yeah, and so that started to juxtaposition. You see, spirit works in, miraculous ways, right? And she made it so that that particular job, when she asked me to come be a consultant for her, I said, well, I'm dancing. I was doing ballroom dancing at the time. I'd finally left my corporate career. I found ballroom dancing. I was doing ballroom dancing avidly, like competing and going all around the world and jet setting and all that stuff. Um, and this is like a couple years before Dancing with the Stars actually started. And so I was on the road with all those people that you see on Dancing with the Stars, all those pros. We were all on the road competing together. And so when I was doing all of that, I told her, I said, I'm a dancer first, I'm your consultant second. She says, no problem. Come work, come, I would commute down to Washington, D.C. from New York once a week. I would work with her in the office 2 days, and then the rest of the week I was back in New York dancing. And so I had configured this whole career thing was configuring. And while I was working with her, I was doing psychic work. So it was like this whole, like, I had this chunk of time where I learned what it was for all of the things that you love to coalesce, and that the universe will come up and support you. And at the same time, I was really building my channeling muscle. And it moved over, though, from doing mediumship, where I was talking to people who had already been incarnate, to angels, angelic, speaking with angelic, doing angelic readings, and then focusing in on your higher self, that version of us that's non-physical, but animates the body and has basically two sides: the side that's within the body, and that would be our 3D self, and then the side of us that's outside of the body, being the navigation system, which is the 5D self. And so that now, 2 books later and 20 years, that's where we are today. So that was like a very quick version of the evolution of kind of where we're at with it today.
That's an amazing evolution, and to me, it's obvious that spirit throughout all of that has been supporting you and just like going, "This door's opening. Look for
And
this."
closing. With every
And
open
closing, yeah, and closing too.
head, closed door too. So it's not for the faint of heart, but it's true. It happens for everybody. It's part of the system of answers.
Yeah.
Is that as the new answers are coming, the old answers are leaving, and sometimes that can be a little bit intense.
Did it feel like that some parts of your life were a bit of an initiation into a new way of being?
Oh my God, I felt like the whole thing was some giant unending initiation. Because it when you're an energetic leader, you're put through like 10 times the number of tests that the normal person is put through.
Yeah.
Because you have to be able to come back in and relate to people and say, oh, I felt that before. Not even so much I've seen that before, but I felt that before. And it helps and it's a lonely path because you're always kind of ahead of where everybody else is. And
I know that.
and then you're hypersensitive, so you're feeling things that other people aren't feeling yet, and you can describe them, and then there's nobody to talk to about it. So there's that, and then the judgment, the criticism, why your parents are like, why did you leave the phone company? I do want to rewind, and you're a what now? A site? What? What's happening? So there was a lot of different moving parts. There's a lot of different moving parts. But I think the most important thing for people is to know that no one doing this work is special. It's part of our own senses. We're all born with the ability to get contextual messages from our higher self. We're meant to do that. We're meant to walk the planet with a whole energetic toolkit fully operationalized to go along with the physical existence. God, the powers that be, we all know the world is not an easy place to navigate. And you certainly weren't meant to navigate it without your energetic tools and just a set of physical tools. And I think that's where we're at now in the energetic history cycle and energetic evolutionary cycle that we have, is that we're coming into a time now where people are starting to get their awareness of their own built-in skills and senses and physiologies, energetic physiologies. It's not, people say, oh, you have some sort of special gift. No, I just have a lot of experience using senses that I became aware of sooner than you did. It's not this, you know, psychic gift. And psychic development is completely different than energetic physiology, because we're not trying to predict for ourselves. And that's where people think, oh, I could never, it must be a gift because I can't predict. Well, it's not about prediction, it's about communicating. It's about getting the messages you need to run your day-to-day life that apply, not predicting what's going to happen to you in 3 months. It's about today. What does my body need to eat today? Instead of thinking, I think I'm supposed to have vitamin C because I read that in a magazine, ask your body. Your body is whispering to you too. Your body has its own energetic communication system. Your body will say, hey, I think I don't need vitamin C today. I need that vitamin D pill, or I just need a banana. I need some potassium. If once you start to listen in that energetic listening way and become fluent in those energetic senses that you're born with, and we start to match that level of fluency with your mental mind, your mental thought processes, and how fluent you are in your physical abilities, you combine that, oh, everything becomes possible.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. And I think that what's also happening right now in reality is that a lot more people are waking up to these abilities because of the light that's coming to us from the galactic center. So we're actually starting to get into a high vibration of light. And as a part of that, psychic ability, intuitive ability, talking to spirits, both, human and non-organic spirits, it starts to become normal. And I think a part of your job is to, and my job too, is to actually help people understand that that's normal. And that's usually our birthright, but in the last X number hundred of years, we've actually suppressed that through, all sorts of different ways. And, one of the first ways that we all started doing it was just writing things down instead of just talking to each other. Probably even speech, we probably were just telepathic way back when. So,
Yeah.
mm,
Yep.
yeah. And I think that connection is coming back. And I look forward to that actually happening. Now, you mentioned discovering the energetic communication system and 5D frequency-based abilities that we are all born with. How would you explain those concepts to someone who is new to that idea? What is 5D frequency-based ability to you?
Well, so one of the major tenets that we are sort of handed, one of the major assumptions that we're taught when we're born, is generally people are sort of pushed into we're born into a culture where we have some sort of formalized religion. And most of the religions are based on a chassis where they say, okay, you've got this physical body, and then there's hopefully some soul thing inside of that physical body. And then you need that guy over there, priest, rabbi, minister, pope, whatever, to let you know that that soul is doing the right thing or not doing the right thing. And so there's this thing out there called God that, based on what this guy in between you and God is saying, is how he's going to react. So, like, if you want to get forgiveness, you got to go to confession and talk to the guy in the box first. And then he'll talk to God and say, well, God said you need to say 3 Hail Marys and 2 Our Fathers, and then you're forgiven. And then don't bother him unless you have like the big things like cancer or baby or something like that. But stuff like, is the boyfriend going to text me? That's, yeah, don't do that. Don't ask for that, So you have this, so that's the premise, right? Is that God is out here. We have a soul within us that could be condemned or burned at the stake or whatever. And there's this whole mechanics that have to happen for us to get from point A to point Z. But the way that it's really structured from frequency-based perspective is we're actually these big giant balls of energy that are eternal. And we decide in our energetic form that we would like to have a tangible lifetime so we can have expansion and ascension and tangible experiences. So we allow a portion of our energetic self to inhabit a physical thimble size of a body. So if you think of this big giant ball of energy, that's usually the size of the planet Earth, and this body that you're in, you take a portion of that energy, and you're going to say, I'm going to get in that car and I'm going to drive around in that lifetime and I'm going to do those things. So you inhabit the body car.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that you're not still the big giant ball of energy. It just means there's a portion of you that gets to be physical. The rest of you is helping the portion of you that's animating that car, that's driving that car, navigate. So you become so you have your higher self, which is out in from fifth dimensional frequency and above, because it's non-physical. So that's fifth dimensional frequency and above. And then you have your embodied self, which is third dimensional frequency and below, right? Because it's slow enough vibration that you can have solid, tangible, seemingly solid, tangible experience. The fourth dimensional energy between 5D and 3D is the transit energy. So when we start saying, I want to manifest, a new car, and I want to bring that through the energy and bring it into my physical 3D experience. Your new car is in a 5D state right now. You're in a 3D state. You go and you meditate or you do some sort of energetic work to raise your vibration. That's pushing you to the fourth dimensional corridor. Your higher self is saying, oh, he or she or they is saying, okay, I need my car now. So it lowers the frequency of the car so it becomes tangible, and that transfers in that fourth dimensional energy, and then you can use it in third dimension. So from that perspective, so that's part one. Okay. Part two is that when you're in this physical body, you come equipped with two sets of tools. You're in the physical body car and you have a dashboard, right? We all drive, you know what a dashboard is. On one side of the dashboard are your 3D tools. So you have your biology and your physiology, you have your mental mind that helps you to logisticize your world, knows all about the laws and the rules. It keeps track of what you've done before. So it has memory, it has, it keeps you safe. It's very much about security and safety and keeping you whole so you can stay alive for this incarnation. You also have your physiology and all your biological senses, your physical senses. And you also have the negative emotions, the library of negative emotions. So blame, shame, guilt, fear, anxiety, all of that is on the 3D side of the dashboard. That doesn't exist in 5D, the negative emotion. On the other side of the dashboard, we have what I call what was channeled to me as travel size versions of the energetic abilities you have when you don't have the body. So you didn't get stripped of all your energetic abilities that you have when you are not embodied. You get a travel size version of them on the dashboard within this new body car. And that includes your ability to communicate energetically, which includes your intuition, your ability to what we call free-form channel, or to, get contextual messages, not just, signs and symbols. Your ability to communicate telepathically, your ability to get things through manifesting, to get things that you need out of energetic form into physical form. Your ability to self-heal is also on this energetic dashboard. And your ability to communicate non-physically, right? So to be able to sense things like the weather and things like the animals and the plant kingdoms. And, when you go into a room and you feel there's something off that whole suite of energetic senses on that energetic side of the dashboard. The language that pendulums back and forth between your physical self and your non-physical. So your 3D side and your 5D side is intuition. That's your energetic communication system. And so what I focus on is helping people to not only get signs and symbols and synchronicities and where they go like aha moments, but to get what's behind that sign, symbol, synchronicity, which is a big contextual download. So when people say, oh, Mari, I saw 1111 like 6 times this week, and I saw 444, and it's got to mean something. Is there a message? What do you think? And I said, well, they're like, is that intuition? Well, that is equivalent to the ringtone on your phone.
Yeah, that's qualia.
It's literally like bling, bling, but you have to answer the phone to get the message.
Yeah.
Right? There's a message, there's a conversation. You don't have the conversation by saying, oh, the phone's ringing. Oh, look at that. The phone's ringing. You know what? I love that ringtone. Oh, that's Paul McCartney. I love Paul McCartney. That's the Paul McCartney ringtone. That's not what you're saying. You answer the phone. And then you have a conversation, right? And so that's the piece that's been missing for everybody is how do you get the contextual download? And this is why people get stuck. They know something's there, but they can't interpret it. So what do? You go to a psychic. And a psychic doesn't interpret the message. The psychic predicts the future based on your energetic field. It's not even the same. It's not even in the same category. It's saying if you stay the same, a psychic says, well, if you stay the same, if all things stay the same, and you keep making the decisions as you've been making them habitually, this is the most likely outcome. This is what's the highest potential outcome in your frequency right now. But when you're doing personal channeling, it's literally answering the freaking phone and saying, okay, what do I need to do with this business today? Do I advertise this or do I advertise that? Do I price it like this or do I price it like that? Don't price it at all. You're doing the wrong project. You need to do this project over here. Here's how we'll help you figure that out. And then, so the first thing that your body does, your higher self is what governs the 5D side of that dashboard. So your higher self is covering the energetic side of you. Your mental mind, your intellect, is covering the physical side of it, right? So we turn to our intellect and say, okay, well, what have I done before? How does this all solve this problem? What have I done before? No, 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 no. Your intellect cannot come up with its own new idea. What people don't realize is that when you come up with a new idea, that quote, aha moment, oh my God, you're getting that from your higher self in the 5D side. It's downloading from one side to the other. But what happens, because the intellect can only do what it's seen before or what it's seen other people do before. This is why we go to Amazon and look for reviews. Like, I'm not going to buy that toaster until I look on Amazon. Even if I'm in the store looking at a toaster, I will still go on the Amazon app to see what all the reviews are before I buy that dog food or that cleanser for the house or that appliance.
Just to be sure.
Yeah, that's the intellect. Your higher self doesn't need Amazon reviews. Your higher self says, that vacuum over there. You're like, yeah, but what about that one? But that one? And then all of a sudden you see, 3 people have it, and then your friend, oh, I just bought this vacuum, totally quote random and all that. And so your higher self has a whole communication system where it uses your environment to give you proof of those messages. And there's a whole system. I mean, I could go on and on. I'll stop here, but that's the two sides. And our job is to first discover the 5D side of ourselves, and then to learn how to actually maximize it, not just be aware that it's kind of there, but to actually engage in it and maximize it. And that's what we're going into now with everything going on in the world. And you were just talking about awakenings. We're awakening to the dashboard, to that side of ourselves that's going to take us to those really customized versions of our life, right? Because, and this is I'm just being told to say this, I'm going to say it. Our energetic evolution as people has to throttle alongside with the technological evolution as a society. Last year we saw AI like hit the mainstream. It's been around for a long time, but we saw it really like 2023 when ChatGPT came out on the scene. And first the entrepreneurs were like, and now everybody's like, oh my God, and now we're seeing medicine. They're starting to talk about robotic uteruses and all kinds of things that are happening where AI is gonna pretty much flip everything upside down. Well, your energetic abilities need to keep up the pace with what's happening technologically, because it's just for the survival of the race. That you have to be able to have discernment. And with the way that technology is mirroring so much of regular thought, it's seeming to like replace regular thought. You have to be very, very much in tune with your higher self so that you have that ability to discern and to stay with that empowered march on the planet. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. We have to keep our sovereignty amongst all of this, because without it, then we lose ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I like the way you described that, like going beyond the ringtone. That's really clear, and the understanding that you can connect into where that information is leading to be able to give you even more connection to your intuition. And as you say, the aha factor, which is that wakes you up to seeing the dashboard and going, well, that's my life. I can now make choices.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really interesting the way you described that. Now, many people actually struggle with trusting their own intuition though, and they actually feel disconnected from their higher self. What are some of the common blocks that you've seen, and how do you help those people overcome them?
So I think the first common block is just not understanding the infrastructure of how it works.
Yeah.
Because in my academy where I have people, and I can they get the whole technological blueprint of how it works. I'm talking energetic technology, not like AI technology, right? And they say, oh, these are my tools. Okay, this is my blueprint of what I'm really working with here. Oh, that's been working all along, but I just wasn't using it in that way. Um, so we have one of the frameworks that there's two frameworks that I would say could be very helpful in answering that question. The first framework is the anatomy of the aha moment, because that's where people sort of enter this world as they get these quote aha moments and they say, oh my gosh, wait a second, that was something. Like, oh my God. And that's really where I say, like the 3D world and the 5D world, the French kiss, and you know it in consciousness, like, whoa, wait, what was that? You know, and so, but there's an anatomy to that. Every aha moment actually has the same structure, even though it can be completely different outcomes. And the structure starts with, we have energetic senses first. So your higher self will always go to your energetic senses first. It always goes to your one of your four clairs, or all of them: clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, claircognizance. We are all born with all of the clairs, all of the energetic senses. Just like we have sight and touch and taste, we have an overlaying sense of energetic sight, energetic touch, and all that, and hearing and knowing and feeling. So your higher self goes first to those energetic senses. And then immediately, and this is every time, this is never fails, immediately your body is a psychic antenna, and your body has a physical reaction to the energetic senses being tapped. Your body will give you goosebumps. You'll get a feeling of lightness. You'll get a feeling of heaviness. You'll get the hair on the back of your neck stand up. You'll get the truth bumps. You'll get a sense of coolness. You'll get a sense of nausea almost. If it's a negative thing, you get that sense of foreboding, that heavy energy. Your body is the psychic antenna that says, mail's in, there's something, pay attention. It could be something, it's like, oh, that puppy, that's the one for me. I'm getting covered in chills. Oh my God. You feel like there's this lift. That's your energetic self and your physical self working together, as they always do. The third part of the anatomy of the aha moment. So step one, energetic senses. Step two, physical reaction. Step three, your higher self then goes out into your environment and it sends you signs, symbols, synchronicities, and messengers to reinforce or to give you the message. If you don't know how to download the messages yourself and channel for yourself yet, then what it will do is go out into the environment and it will put you in front of the TV just in time for Oprah to explain this big concept that you needed to answer that question you had. Or it'll put you just at the grocery store when those blueberries are on sale and it's Thanksgiving and you have to make 30 pies. Or, it will send the cardinal to let you know your mom who passed away is with you as you go for this medical test. It's your higher self will go out into your environment, signs, symbols, synchronicities, and messengers. So those are the three. So that's the three steps of the aha moment, three of the anatomy of the aha moment. You can always ask your higher self to reinforce the quote hunch that you're feeling. So most of the time you feel something, you say, hey, I wonder if that's something. I wonder if I should consider that. Well, instead of just going to your intellect and saying, okay, I saw Johnny do that and he failed, so forget it. Or, oh, let me go look up what they do statistically. That's where your intellect would take you. The first thing you want to do before you go to Google is you want to go to your higher self and say, can you give me a sign? Can you give me a symbol? Can you give me some sort of synchronistic event? Can you send me a messenger and let me know that this is the direction I should take? It's a two-way conversation. It's not a one-way prediction. that you have to pay for, and then it's over. And then you have to just wait and wonder if it's going to happen, where you're giving your power away. The psychic thing, and believe me, I was psychic, done hundreds of thousands of readings in my career. I can tell you that channeling your own higher self is going to be a bazillion times more accurate than any psychic, even the best of the best, because you're choosing with your free will and you're working with that version of you that's expanding and ascending. So that anatomy of the aha moment is I think the fastest way to help you to get reassurance, that in a empowered way, by asking, right? And then being aware to notice. The more awareness you have that, okay, wait a second, I'm not going to blow off that thing as a coincidence. I'm going to say, wait a second, I do have a little rule of thumb. If you see it 3 times, then it's a sign. So like if you go to a butterfly farm and you see blue butterfly, it's not a sign, right? Because that's where they are. But if you're like in Manhattan and you're walking down the street in, Times Square, and a monarch butterfly lands on your nose, yeah, that was probably a sign. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's not, you don't want to, some people get sign happy, like sign drunk, and they're like, oh, everything is a sign. No, not everything is a sign. But if you see it 3 times, then you should really pay attention.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the messages are, when you tune into them, they actually become very clear and easy to work around and to work with. Now, I'm in the understanding that you're a 3rd generation intuitive. How did you discover that?
Well, my grandmother at the age of, I don't know, I guess I was about 6. My dad was in the service, so I was in Germany for a little while as a child. Spoke German before I spoke English, and then we lived in Hawaii for 4 years. So when I came home, I was about 6, and my grandmother lived in our house while we were overseas. And so she would take me to the health food stores and teach me all about organic foods. And it was funny because my grandmother was a very interesting being. She was both Catholic and Jewish, because she said somebody has to be right. So she did both. So there was inherited kind of breakdown of like, you must be one thing or the. She's like, she literally had a Star of David and a miraculous medal of the Virgin Mary soldered together, and
Wow.
she would wear them, and she would turn it over depending on the day. Where she was. If she was in the synagogue, she had the Star of David. She was in the church, she had Mary. But she was basically saying, look, somebody's got to be right. Probably everybody's right in some way. I'm going to connect to the energy. Meanwhile, she had like garlic knots in the ceiling of the house, as protection. She had amulets. She had all kinds of potions, and not potions, but like remedies. And like, she never used anything that was like medicinal, really. She would always go holistic first, always organic first, taking me to health food stores when it was like, dusty plywood floors and potatoes growing on one side of the store and these giant carrots and things. So she was that kind of backbone. And then my mother was very curious about energy and frequency, and she actually started studying when Seth and all the channels came out. She was riveted by all those books, and when Shirley MacLaine came out with Out on a Limb, that whole corridor of time where she was the kind of the preeminent modern person, sort of bridging people into the spiritual conversations. My mom actually went and studied with her personally, and she was, when in my teenage years, which I didn't care about this in my elementary school years and teenage years, she was studying all this stuff. She had crystals, and she would take me to crystal shops and channeling sessions in people's basements. When all the other kids were at the mall, I was in channeling sessions in people's basements of their houses and going to, like, we had a family psychic, and, and so it kind of was just sort of rotated in. But the other thing that I think is even more of a closer answer to your question is my mom is a psychotherapist. In fact, psychoanalytic psychotherapist. She had a PhD, and she had a private practice. and she would go into the practice, go into her private sessions because we had her office in the house. And she would go in, she says, I'm always in my head when I go in because I have to file, and she would do like marriage counseling and stuff. She goes, but I sit there and I listen and I listen, and all of a sudden I get this almost like this stream of consciousness, and I just start to speak, and they go, oh my gosh, and it just solves their problems. And she would it was amazing. Like her practice was huge. She didn't realize she was, quote, channeling. She didn't call it that. But she also would have prophetic dreams. So we would get to the breakfast table, and my sister and I would sit trying to eat our cereal, and she says, "Girls," and we're like, "Oh God, I had a dream." I'm like, "Oh shit! Oh, sorry."
That's okay.
And I'm so sorry, please. But it was literally like, oh God, and she would always be right.
Mm.
She would always, we were like, stop having dreams. Like, don't sleep. Just don't have any dreams. She would always rat us out on something, or she would predict something. And we were just like, it's like, this is too much anxiety. I'm going to eat at school. I'm not going to even sit with you anymore. 'Cause she would always do it around the dinner table. So, yeah. So that kind of, it was, I had the frameworks of religion, because my mother will pull out a rosary and a Bible in a minute, alongside of the crystals, alongside of the Buddhist whatever and the Muslim. They didn't kind of um concretize where it was. They knew there's an energy, there's something bigger than us, somebody's got to be right, and whatever felt for that time, that it was expansive, that it was comforting, that's where these two women went. And so I think that was what gave me my kind of fluidity.
Yeah, yeah, a framework to grow from and
Yeah.
to eventually discover your own path to that connection to
Well,
intuition and
just
channeling.
knowing. My grandmother actually used to watch Robert Schuller on TV every Sunday, so she even had the evangelicals in the house. Like, it was unbelievable. And, but every Sunday we would watch this. This was part of the Sunday routine. We would go to church sometimes and watch Robert Schuller. My grandmother did it. I can listen to Joel Osteen and then go channel a session, and then like I don't have this. Oh, they're evangelicals, so they don't make sense. Oh, they're Jews, so they can't be. We can't listen to that. I think everybody. It's essentially, there's always the interpretation of how to pray is all out there. What's more important is, what's the gatekeeper for how to get the answers? Because every one of these religions has a way to get the answers. Every single one of them. But it's usually reserved for the higher echelon, the rabbis who are over 40 years old and men, and the priests who are, bishops, they get the mysteries. The mysteries you see it in the voodoo and in the indigenous religions. The medicine man has the answers. Like, somebody is holding, gatekeeping the answer part, but everybody gets to ask the prayer, because that means everybody's needy. Right? So, to me, my work, my mission is to teach people the language of answered prayer. I don't care what religion you're in. You are a frequency-based being. Be whatever religion you want. It has nothing to do with it. Don't impose on everybody else. Don't assume that just only you are going to heaven, because that's not the truth. And learn how to have that conversation, direct conversation with the God of your understanding, and how to get your answers. And then you have a complete package to run your life.
Mm.
Running
Yeah,
your
makes
life
complete
without these
sense.
answers is running a submarine without a periscope. Try that.
So now you've written a series of books. Now the first one I think is your Aha Factor, and then you did a book called Your 5D Toolkit.
No,
Now,
actually, the second one is Beyond Intuition.
oh, okay,
This
sorry, I
is
got
the
that
game
in a
changer. So
sequence.
it's Beyond Intuition is the new one.
Yeah, Beyond Intuition. So, what are people going to find if they pick up your books and read them?
Oh boy. Well, so the Aha Factor, the first book was, I did that about 7 years ago. Um, that one was really a primer for just basic intuition and how to use your intuition and that type of thing. The 5D work, I started channeling well after I finished the first book. So the 5D work is all that I've been talking about is in Beyond Intuition. This was I channeled this Beyond Intuition, and what it focuses on is that whole energetic toolkit, the framework of how this all works, which is clear, connect, communicate, create. So how to get that, basically there's a whole system in there of how to get your first contextual downloaded message from your higher self, but also just an assessment to see where you're at now, because you're born with all these frequencies. I mean, you're literally born with them. So they're all operational. It's just you're not recognizing, and sometimes you're using them against yourself. So in the frequency assessment in the book, it helps you to establish kind of where you're at now with what you've been using. It helps you to start to self-identify. And then it gives you step-by-step system to get those first real contextual, going beyond the ringtone and getting those first contextual messages from your higher self. And essentially what you want to do is kind of build that two-way conversational relationship with your higher self and start recording messages for yourself each day. So in my phone, in my voice memo, because I record the messages now instead of writing them down, I have 2,200 messages because I can get 2 or 3 messages in a day. We have over 100 messages coming at us every single day because your higher self, unlike the religious versions of things, weighs in on everything. Do you want iced tea or water? Do you want, should you turn to the left or should you go to the right? Should you go to the grocery store or should you skip it for today and go tomorrow? All of those small inconsequential decisions. Here's something for your listeners to try. If you start to invite your higher self in with the smallest micro decisions, you start to collect money in the bank of trust. So when you get to the big things that you're worried about, oh, is this right or wrong? And you've built up this two-way relationship with your higher self on these small micro things. And you're not just waiting for some big thing to spook yourself and throw yourself into, okay, I've got to, pray for a Hail Mary for a miracle. I've been building my trust each day by asking asking my higher self to weigh in on my small micro decisions. And as you start to feel that connection with those small micro things and sort of prove it out to yourself, you'll see your synchronicities will start to increase and you'll start to feel that sense of connection. And then it snowballs. And that's how you build that muscle of trust. So that's what we go over in the book.
Okay. So, Murray, we've come to the end of the podcast. How can people find you and your books?
So the best place, I kind of have it all consolidated on one page, is at beyondintuitionbook.com. So beyondintuitionbook.com, and it has the socials, it has the how to get the book and all the other things.
Nice. I'll include that link in the show notes. And I want to say thank you so much for coming on and explaining your life story and your understanding of intuition and the importance of the connection to our intuition.
I'm so grateful. Thank you so much for having me. It's been so much fun.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. I'll just say goodbye to listeners.
Okay.
It was really good to hear Mari's understanding of her intuition and connection to intuition and how she describes that. You can take a point of the aha moment and then go further deeper into that as a connection to your higher self. And then within that, know that your decisions are clear. A very good point. So if you've enjoyed today's show, remember to like and subscribe. And if you're on a podcast app, give us 5 stars, say something nice. That'd be really good as well. If you think somebody could benefit from this show, please share it to them. Thank you so much for listening, and bye for now.